She had exactly 3 seconds to make a choice that would either get her killed or change the entire Chicago underworld forever. The man at table 4 wasn't just a customer. He was Luca Romano, the city's most dangerous phantom. And the woman holding his hand? She wasn't looking at him with love. She was looking at the clock. When you're a waitress, you're invisible. People say things in front of you that they'd never whisper in a confessional. But tonight, the secret wasn't an affair. It was an execution, and the shooters were already at the back door. The Onyx room always smelled of truffle oil, expensive cologne, and fear. It was the kind of place where Chicago's elite came to cut deals, and where the lighting was kept dim enough to hide the sins of the city's most powerful men. Maya adjusted her apron, the stiff fabric digging into her waist. It was Tuesday, usually a slow night, but table 4 was occupied. It was always occupied when he came in. Luca Romano. You didn't need to read the newspapers to know who Luca was. You just had to look at him. He didn't carry himself like a thug. He moved with the lethal grace of an apex predator who had long ago forgotten what it felt like to be hunted. He was wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Maya's entire year of rent, tailored to hide the gun everyone knew he carried. Sitting across from him was Sienna. She was new. Luca went through women like he went through scotch, quickly and without much aftertaste, but Sienna seemed different. She was a model, or maybe an influencer, the kind of woman who looked like she was permanently under a ring light, blonde hair cascading in perfect waves, diamonds glittering at her throat. To anyone else in the restaurant, they looked like a power couple on a date. But Maya had been waiting tables at the Onyx for 5 years. She knew the rhythm of a date. She knew the rhythm of an argument. And she knew the rhythm of a betrayal. "More wine, sir?" Maya asked, her voice steady. Being invisible was her superpower. Waitresses were part of the furniture. "Leave the bottle," Luca said. His voice was a low rumble, like a luxury car idling. He didn't look at her. His dark eyes were fixed on Sienna, studying her with an intensity that would have made a lesser woman crumble. Maya placed the bottle of Barolo on the table, her eyes instinctively flickering to Sienna. The woman's hand was trembling, just a micro-tremor, barely hitting the stem of her wine glass. Her eyes kept darting to the heavy velvet curtains that covered the front entrance, then to her phone, which sat face down on the tablecloth. Maya stepped back, fading into the shadows near the service station. She watched. Sienna picked up her phone. She didn't unlock it. She just tapped the screen to check the time. 8:14 p.m. She did it again 10 seconds later. 8:14 p.m. "You're distracted tonight, Tesoro," Luca said. He took a sip of his wine, his gaze never leaving her face. "Is the risotto not to your liking?" "No, it's perfect, Luca," Sienna stammered, offering a smile that didn't reach her terrified eyes. "I just have a headache. The lights are a bit bright." The Onyx room was practically dark. Maya felt a cold prickle at the base of her neck. She walked towards the kitchen to grab a water pitcher, passing table 4 again. As she did, Sienna's phone lit up with a notification. It was face up now. Maya had 20/20th vision. The text was short, brutal, and clear. "Sender, unknown packages secure. Exit through kitchen in 5. Clear the line." Maya froze for a fraction of a second. Clear the line. That meant get out of the way. She pushed through the swinging doors into the kitchen. The noise hit her. Chefs shouting, pans sizzling. But something was wrong here, too. The back door, usually propped open for the smokers, was shut tight. A new dishwasher, a guy named Cale, who had started 3 days ago, was standing by it, texting furiously. He looked up when Maya entered, his eyes hard, scanning her face. He wasn't washing dishes. He was guarding the exit. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. It was a setup, a pincer movement. They were going to hit Luca Romano right here, in the middle of dinner service. If the shooters came in through the front and the back, everyone in the crossfire would be collateral damage. including her. She grabbed the water pitcher, her hands shaking. She had to get out. She could just slip into the changing room, climb out the small window, and run. She owed Luca Romano nothing. He was a mobster, a criminal. Men like him died in restaurants like this every other Tuesday in Chicago history books. But then she remembered the way he had tipped her last week. $300 on a $50 check, because he noticed she was limping from a double shift. He had looked her in the eye then. "Buy new shoes," he'd said. Not a command, but a kindness. She looked back through the porthole window of the kitchen door. Sienna was standing up. "I'm just going to the ladies' room, Luca," Sienna said, grabbing her purse. "I'll be right back." "Take your time," Luca said. He swirled his wine. He didn't know. He was the most dangerous man in the city, and he was sitting there like a duck in a barrel because he trusted the pretty girl in the diamonds. Sienna wasn't going to the bathroom. She was clearing the line. Once she was away from the table, the bullets would start flying. Maya looked at the napkin stack on the waiter's station. She grabbed a pen. Her hand hovered. If she did this, she was involved. If she did this, she was declaring a side in a war she didn't understand. If she didn't do this, he was dead in 60 seconds. She scribbled fast. The ink bled slightly into the thick paper. "Your girlfriend sold you out. They're in position." She folded the napkin. Once, twice. It looked like a piece of trash. Or a coaster. She took a deep breath, smoothing her face into the mask of the invisible waitress. She walked back out onto the floor. Sienna was halfway to the bathroom, walking briskly, her head down. She didn't look back at Luca. Maya approached table 4. Luca was looking at his phone now, bored. "Check, sir?" Maya asked. Luca looked up, annoyed. "I didn't ask for the check. We aren't finished." "I think you'll want this, sir," Maya said, her voice dropping to a whisper that barely cut through the ambient jazz music. "On the house." She slid the folded napkin under his wine glass. She pressed her thumb on it for a split second, locking eyes with him. "Read it," she mouthed. "Now." Luca frowned. The irritation in his face shifted to confusion, and then, as he saw the terror in the waitress's eyes, to something sharper, alertness. He didn't unfold it immediately. He covered it with his large hand, sliding it off the table and into his lap in one fluid motion, unseen by the room. He looked down. Maya watched the transformation. It was instantaneous. The bored, wealthy diner vanished. The predator returned, his jaw tightened, the muscles bunching. He didn't look at the bathroom where Sienna had fled. He didn't look at the kitchen. He looked at Maya. "Where?" he asked. One word. No breath. "Kitchen door. And front," she whispered, refilling his water with a steady hand, despite the adrenaline flooding her veins. "The dishwasher is the inside man." Luca nodded. A micro-movement. "Get behind the bar," he ordered, his voice devoid of emotion. "Stay down. Mr. Romano, go." Maya turned and walked towards the heavy mahogany bar. As she moved, she saw Luca stand up. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't run. He simply buttoned his suit jacket and picked up his steak knife. It was a serrated, heavy-handled piece of cutlery. At that exact moment, the kitchen doors burst open. Cale, the dishwasher, stepped out, a suppressed submachine gun raised. Simultaneously, the heavy velvet curtains at the front entrance were ripped aside by 2 men in ski masks. Sienna, standing by the bathroom hallway, screamed, a fake, theatrical scream meant to signal the start of the chaos. But Luca wasn't in the chair anymore. Before Cale could raise the barrel, a wine bottle flew across the room, spiraling like a football. It smashed into Cale's face with a sickening crunch of glass and bone. The gunman staggered back, firing a burst into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. Patrons screamed and dove under tables. Maya vaulted over the bar, landing on the rubber mats just as the front window shattered under a hail of gunfire. She curled into a ball, hands over her head, listening to the war erupting in the dining room. It was loud, deafeningly loud, The pop-pop-pop of the suppressed weapons, the shattering of expensive crystal, the screams of the elite. And then, silence. Well, not silence. A groaning. Maya waited 5 seconds. 10, waitress. The voice came from right above her. She looked up. Luca Romano was leaning over the bar. He had a cut on his cheekbone, bleeding sluggishly, and his suit was dusted with drywall powder. He held a black pistol that definitely wasn't his steak knife. He must have taken it off one of the hitmen. He looked calm, terrifyingly calm. "You okay?" he asked. Maya nodded, unable to speak. "Good," Luca said. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a money clip, and tossed a thick stack of bills onto the bar next to her head. It was thousands of dollars. "That's for the tip. Now get up. You can't stay here." "Why?" Maya croaked, pulling herself up. "Because Sienna isn't the only one who saw you talk to me," Luca said, his eyes scanning the ruined restaurant. "You just saved my life, Maya, which means you just ruined theirs. You're a loose end now." Maya froze. How do you know my name?" Luca almost smiled. It was a dark, dangerous expression. "I know everything that happens in my city. Except, apparently, who my girlfriend was sleeping with. Come on." He held out a hand. It was blood-stained. "If you stay, the police will ask questions you can't answer. And if the cops don't get you, the men who sent these amateurs will." Maya looked at her apron, at the shattered remains of the onyx room, at the dead body of the dishwasher lying by the kitchen door. She took his hand. "Where are we going?" "To find out who bought the bullets," Luca said, pulling her over the bar. "And you're going to help me." The alleyway behind the onyx room was slick with rain and grease. Luca didn't run. He moved with a terrifying, efficient speed, dragging Maya by the hand. Her sneakers slapped against the wet pavement, her breath coming in jagged gasps. "My car!" Luca gritted out, pointing to a matte black Audi RS7 parked illegally by a dumpster. "Get in." "I can't just leave," Maya protested, panic finally piercing through the adrenaline. "My bag, my ID, it's inside." "If you go back inside, you're dead," Luca said, shoving her into the passenger seat. He didn't slam the door. He pressed it shut until it clicked, then vaulted over the hood to the driver's side. As the engine roared to life, a deep, guttural growl of 600 horsepower, blue lights flashed at the mouth of the alley. "The police." "Get down," Luca commanded. Maya curled into the footwell. She felt the car surge backward, tires screeching, then a violent jolt as Luca clipped a garbage can, spinning the car 180 degrees. He didn't take the main road. He tore through a chain-link fence, metal screaming against paint, and shot out onto a service road parallel to the Chicago River. For 10 minutes, the only sound was the engine and Maya's ragged breathing. Luca drove with one hand on the wheel, the other pressing a burner phone to his ear. "It's me," he said into the phone. "The onyx is burned. Sienna turned. The dishwasher was a plant. No, I'm clear. I have a civilian." A pause. "Clean it up, Silas. Burn the logs. Make sure the cameras inside the restaurant malfunctioned." He hung up and tossed the phone into the back seat. Finally, he slowed down, merging onto the highway, blending in with the late-night traffic. "You can sit up now," he said. Maya pulled herself into the seat. She was trembling. "Who is Silas? What does clean it up mean?" Luca glanced at her. The streetlights cast rhythmic shadows over his sharp features. The blood on his cheek had dried. "It means erasing you from the crime scene, Maya. If the police find your ID, they put you in the system. If you're in the system, the people who tried to kill me can find your address in 5 minutes." "Who were they?" "Contractors. Mercenaries," Luca said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "But they were hired by someone who knows my schedule, someone who knew I'd be at table 4. "Sienna," Maya whispered. "Sienna was the bait," Luca corrected. "She doesn't have the brains to organize a hit like that. She was just the delivery system." He pulled the car off the highway, navigating toward the industrial district near the docks. The buildings here were skeletons of old Chicago, brick factories, rusted water towers, silence. "Where are we going?" Maya asked, clutching her seatbelt. "Safe house," Luca said. "My penthouse is compromised. My clubs are watched. This is the only place off the grid." He pulled into a nondescript warehouse garage. The heavy steel door rattled shut behind them, sealing them in darkness, until overhead halogen lights flickered on. The space wasn't a dungeon. It was a high-tech bunker disguised as a mechanic's shop. Monitors lined one wall. A wall of weapons lined the other. Maya stepped out of the car, her legs wobbling. "So this is it? I just live in a warehouse now?" "For tonight," Luca said, stripping off his ruined suit jacket and tossing it on a workbench. Underneath, he wore a white dress shirt stained with drywall dust and blood. He rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle and ink. "Tomorrow, we find out who signed the check for those bullets. And you," he pointed a finger at her, "you're going to tell me exactly what you saw before you dropped that note." "I told you," Maya said. Defensiveness rising. She checked her phone. "Details, Maya," Luca snapped, walking over to a mini-fridge and tossing her a bottle of water. "The devil is in the details. What color was the phone case? What hand did she use? Did she look at the door? The window? The waiter?" Maya caught the water. She closed her eyes, visualizing the moment. She checked the time twice. 8:14. Then the text came. She didn't unlock it. The preview popped up. And the dishwasher? Cale. He started 3 days ago. He was always texting near the back door. I thought he was just lazy. Maya paused, a memory surfacing. "Wait." Luca stopped pacing. "What?" "Yesterday," Maya said slowly, "I saw him talking to a vendor, the guy who delivers the linens. But it wasn't our usual guy. It was a man in a grey suit. Cale handed him something. A false drive, maybe? Or a lighter. It was small, silver." Luca's eyes narrowed. "The linen service is owned by the O'Connor family, the Irish. I thought you guys had a truce." "We do," Luca said darkly, walking over to the weapon wall and pulling down a tablet. "Or we did, until tonight." He tapped the screen, bringing up a grainy photo of a man. "Was this the guy in the grey suit?" Maya squinted. "No, too old." Luca swiped. Another face. "No." He swiped again. A younger man, handsome, but with cold, dead eyes. Maya gasped. "Him. That's him. He had a scar near his ear." Luca went still. The air in the warehouse seemed to drop 10 degrees. "That," Luca said, his voice terrifyingly soft, "is Declan O'Connor. The exiled son. He's supposed to be in London. Why is he here?" "He's here," Luca turned to her, eyes blazing, "to start a war." The safe house had a shower, thank God. Maya stood under the scalding water for 20 minutes, trying to scrub the feeling of impending death off her skin. She changed into a pair of oversized sweatpants and a t-shirt Luca had thrown at her. They smelled like expensive detergent and gun oil. When she came back out to the main room, Luca wasn't alone. A man was sitting on a crate, typing furiously on a laptop. He was huge, at least 6'5", with a shaved head and a beard that reached his chest. He wore a tactical vest over a hoodie. This had to be Silas. "Civilians clean," Silas rumbled without looking up. "I wiped the restaurant feeds, replaced them with a loop from last Tuesday. As far as the police know, the cameras were down for maintenance." "And the bodies?" Luca asked. He was cleaning a semi-automatic pistol at the workbench, the pieces laid out with surgical precision. "Cale and the 2 shooters are in the furnace at the scrapyard. No teeth, no prints," Silas said casually, as if discussing the weather. He finally looked at Maya. "So this is the guardian angel." Maya crossed her arms. "I'm a waitress, not an angel." "You saved the boss," Silas said. "That makes you a saint in this family, or a target." "Declan O'Connor," Luca interrupted, reassembling the gun with a sharp clack. "Find me his location." "Already on it," Silas said. "But Luca, it doesn't add up. Declan doesn't have the cash flow to hire a hit squad like that." That gear wasn't street level. It was military grade. Someone is funding him. Luca walked over to the monitors. Sienna. She's off the grid, Silas said. Her phone is dead. Apartment is empty. But Silas tapped a key. A bank statement appeared on the big screen. I tracked a payment to her offshore account 3 days ago. 200 grand. From who? Shell company, Silas said. Registered in the Caymans. But look at the routing number. Luca leaned in. His eyes widened slightly. That's not a bank routing number. That's a holding code. For what? Maya asked, stepping closer. She shouldn't be looking, but she couldn't help it. This was her life now. Real estate, Luca said. High-end commercial real estate. He turned to Silas. Cross-reference that code with recent property sales in the loop, Silas typed. Click, click, enter. A building popped up. The Meridian Tower. Maya frowned. The Meridian? That's where the senator had his fundraiser last month. We catered it. Luca spun around. You catered an event at the Meridian? Yeah, for Senator Thorne. Wait, no, not Thorne. Senator Sterling. Correcting herself to avoid forbidden name. It was huge, very high security. Senator Sterling is on my payroll, Luca muttered. Why would he be involved with Declan? He wasn't the host, Maya said, her waitress memory kicking in again. She remembered orders, faces, and who paid the bill. The host was a man named Victor. Victor Hale. Silence crashed into the room. Even Silas stopped typing. Luca looked at Maya as if seeing her for the first time. Victor Hale is my business partner. We own the shipping yards together. Well, Maya said, her voice shaking but firm. He was the one writing the checks that night, and I saw him talking to Sienna in the hallway near the kitchen. I thought they were, flirting. But she looked scared. Luca slammed his fist onto the metal workbench. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Victor! He hissed. The greedy bastard. He wants the yards for himself. He used Declan as the muscle and Sienna as the distraction. It's a coup, Silas said, standing up. If Victor is behind this, he has half the city's cops in his pocket. We can't go to the police. We can't even go to the families. Victor will spin it that you went rogue. Luca paced the room, the predator energy radiating off him in waves. He thinks I'm dead. We have the element of surprise for exactly, he checked his watch, 4 hours, until the morning news cycle doesn't report my body being found. What do we do? Maya asked. She wanted to go home. She wanted to feed her cat. But looking at Luca, seeing the raw intensity in his eyes, she realized something terrifying. She didn't want to leave. She wanted to see him win. We crash a party, Luca said, a cruel smile touching his lips. Victor is hosting a gala tonight at the Museum of Art to celebrate his new acquisition. He thinks he's celebrating my death. We can't get in there, Silas warned. Security will be tight. Facial wreck. They'll be looking for Luca Romano, the mobster, Luca said, walking toward Maya. He stopped inches from her. She could smell the gunpowder and expensive soap. They won't be looking for a wealthy investor and his fiancée. Maya's breath hitched. His what? You need a makeover, Maya, Luca said, his eyes scanning her face. Tonight, you aren't a waitress. You're the woman who is going to help me burn Victor Hale's empire to the ground. The transformation took 2 hours. Silas, surprisingly, knew a guy who knew a guy. A stylist was brought in blindfolded. An older woman named Coco, who didn't ask questions, just worked. When Maya looked in the mirror, she didn't recognize herself. Her messy bun was gone, replaced by sleek, dark waves. The waitress uniform was a memory, swapped for a midnight blue silk gown that clung to every curve and had a slit dangerously high up her thigh. She wore sapphires at her throat, real ones, cold against her skin. But the most dangerous thing wasn't the dress. It was the gun strapped to her inner thigh, hidden beneath the silk. It's a Sig Sauer P-238, Luca had told her, handing her the small, cold weapon. Safety is off. Point and squeeze. Do not hesitate. Now they were in the back of a different car, a white Rolls-Royce Phantom. Luca was wearing a tuxedo. He looked devastating, like James Bond, if James Bond was a sociopath with a vendetta. "You're shaking," Luca said. He didn't mock her. He reached out and took her hand. His grip was warm and solid. "I'm terrified," Maya admitted. "I carry trays, Luca. I don't carry guns. Tonight, you're carrying my life," Luca said seriously. "Victor needs to believe I'm oblivious. We walk in, we smile. We let him think he missed. While we distract him, Silas is going to hack into the server room in the basement and download the ledger, the proof that Victor paid for the hit. And if he tries to kill you there, in front of 300 witnesses and the mayor, he won't. He's a businessman. He only kills in the dark." Luca squeezed her hand. "Just stay by my side. If I say run, you run. You don't look back. You don't wait for me." "I waited for you in the kitchen," Maya whispered. Luca looked at her, and for a second, the hard mask slipped. There was something else there. Gratitude? Affection? "I know. Don't make a habit of being a hero, Maya. The retirement plan sucks." The car stopped. The flash of cameras penetrated the tinted windows. "Showtime," Luca said. The doors opened. They stepped out onto the red carpet leading up to the Chicago Institute of Art. The cold wind whipped Maya's hair, but she held her head high, channeling every ounce of confidence she had ever faked when dealing with rude customers. The paparazzi went wild. "Mr. Romano! Mr. Romano! Who is she? Is it true about the shooting at the Onyx?" Luca ignored them, guiding Maya with a possessive hand on the small of her back. They swept past security, past the metal detectors that mysteriously beeped and were ignored, money talks, and into the grand hall. It was breathtaking. Champagne towers, live orchestra, the city's elite mingling under priceless paintings. And there, standing at the center of the room holding a glass of scotch, was Victor Hale. He was a silver fox, handsome in a corporate way, with a smile that looked practiced in a mirror. He was laughing at something the mayor said. Then he saw Luca. The color drained from Victor's face so fast it was almost comical. His glass tilted, amber liquid spilling onto his cuff. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. Luca leaned down to Maya's ear. "Smile, darling. He looks like he's about to have a heart attack." They approached Victor. The crowd parted for Luca like the Red Sea. "Victor," Luca said smoothly, his voice carrying. "Wonderful party. I almost didn't make it. Had a bit of a service issue at dinner." Victor swallowed hard, regaining his composure. "Luca, I heard there was an incident. I'm so relieved you're safe." His eyes darted to Maya. "And who is this charming guest?" "This is Maya," Luca said, pulling her closer. "My fiancée." Maya's heart hammered, but she extended her hand. "A pleasure, Victor. Luca has told me so much about you, mostly about how much he trusts you." It was a blade wrapped in velvet. Victor flinched. "Fiancé," Victor choked out. "I didn't know you were serious with anyone after Sienna." "Sienna was a mistake," Luca said, his eyes boring into Victor's. "I found out she was disloyal. You know how I handle disloyalty, Victor?" Victor tugged at his collar. "Yes, of course." "Enjoy the party, Victor," Luca said, steering Maya away towards the bar. Once they were out of earshot, Maya let out a breath. "He knows that we know." "He suspects," Luca corrected. "Now he's panicking. He's going to try to leave to make a call. Watch him." Maya watched the reflection in the mirror behind the bar. Victor was moving towards the side exit, the one that led to the private offices. "He's moving," Maya said. "Silas is in position downstairs," Luca said, touching his earpiece. "I need to intercept Victor before he wipes the servers. You stay here. Stay public." "No," Maya said, grabbing his arm. "He's not going to the servers. Look," she pointed discreetly. Victor wasn't going to the offices. He was signaling to a waiter. The waiter nodded and moved towards the main power breaker panel, concealed behind a decorative screen near the kitchen. He's not fleeing, Maya realized, horror dawning on her. He's going to cut the lights. If he cuts the lights... Luca reached for his waistband. He's going to finish the job, Maya said. Right here. Suddenly the orchestra stopped playing. A high-pitched feedback whine screeched through the speakers. Use the distraction. Luca, get down, Maya screamed. She shoved him just as the grand hall plunged into total pitch blackness. 3 muzzle flashes lit up the room from the balcony above. Bang, bang, bang. The champagne tower exploded. Screams erupted. The chaos was absolute. Maya was on the floor, glass shards digging into her knees. Luca? A hand grabbed her arm in the dark. Rough, strong. I've got you, Luca's voice growled in the dark. Move, toward the fire exit, now! They scrambled through the darkness, the staccato bursts of gunfire chasing them. This wasn't a hit anymore. It was a massacre. Victor Hale had decided to burn the whole museum down just to get one man. They burst through the emergency doors into the cool night air of the back alley. Silas was there, the Rolls-Royce idling, passenger door open. Get in! Silas roared. They dove into the back seat. As the car peeled away, Maya looked at Luca. He wasn't looking at the museum. He was looking at a wound on his shoulder. A graze. He was bleeding again. He missed, Luca said, adrenaline making his eyes shine black. He missed again. He's crazy, Maya panted. He nearly killed the mayor. He's desperate, Luca said. He ripped his bow tie off, and now I have the proof. He held up a small silver flash drive. You picked his pocket? Maya stared at him. When I shook his hand, Luca smirked, though he was grimacing in pain. Victor always keeps his encryption keys on him. It's his security blanket. He plugged the drive into the car's console. A list of files appeared on the screen. Red Wedding, Target, Luca Romano. Payment, wire transfer, Moscow. Moscow? Silas asked from the front seat. The Russians? Victor isn't working alone, Luca whispered. He sold Chicago to the Bratva. He looked at Maya. The playfulness was gone. This was war. You can't go back to your life, Maya, Luca said softly. Not after tonight. They saw your face. You're in the game now. Maya looked at the gun strapped to her leg. She looked at the blood on Luca's shirt. She thought about her empty apartment, her dead-end job, the invisibility she had worn like a cloak for years. She looked at Luca, the monster who had treated her with more respect in 24 hours than anyone else had in her entire life. I'm not going back, Maya said, her voice steadying. So how do we kill a Russian invasion? The war room was a rusted trawler docked at an obscure pier on Lake Calumet. It smelled of diesel and dead fish, a sharp contrast to the luxury of the museum, but it was the only place in Chicago where Luca Romano couldn't be tracked. Luca sat at a metal table, the stolen flash drive plugged into a tough book laptop. His shoulder was bandaged, the white gauze stark against his black, skin-tight tactical shirt. The Russians aren't just invading, Luca said, his voice low and dangerous. They're already here. Victor isn't just selling them territory. He's selling them the Port Authority codes. If they get those, they can move anything in and out of the Midwest. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking. Silas paced the small cabin. The transfer of the codes is scheduled for tonight at 2 a.m. at the rail yards. Victor is meeting the Bratva lieutenant, a guy named Volkov. We hit them at the rail yards, Luca decided. He loaded a fresh magazine into his pistol. We kill Volkov. We kill Victor. We burn the codes. It's suicide, Silas said flatly. They'll have 30 men. We have 2. And... He glanced at Maya, a waitress. Maya stood up. She was still wearing the ruined blue silk gown, ripped at the hem to allow for movement. She looked like a fallen angel. I can get you close, Maya said. Both men looked at her. The rail yards, she continued, her mind racing. The administrative building overlooks the switching tracks, right? They order late-night catering every Thursday for the graveyard shift managers. I know because I used to pack those orders at the deli. So? Luca asked. So, Maya walked to the table, pointing at the map on the screen. The delivery van gets waved through the security gate without a check. It's routine. Invisible. If we hijack that van, we drive right into the middle of their perimeter. Luca studied her face. He saw the fear there, but he also saw something harder. Resolve. You're not driving the van, Luca said. Silas drives. You stay here. If Silas drives, they'll shoot him, Maya countered. They know his face. He's your right hand. They don't know me. I'm just a girl in a uniform. No. Luca, she said, using his name with a familiarity that made Silas raise an eyebrow. You said I was in the game. Let me play. Luca stared at her for a long moment. The tension in the small cabin was thick enough to choke on. Finally, he exhaled, a sharp, frustrated sound. Silas, Luca barked. Get her a bulletproof vest and find a deli uniform. The delivery van rattled over the potholes of the rail yard entrance. Maya was behind the wheel, wearing a cap pulled low and a stained apron over her tactical vest. Luca and Silas were hidden in the back, buried beneath trays of stale sandwiches and coffee urns. ID? The guard at the gate grunted, barely looking up from his phone. Maya held out a clipboard. Late night drop for the foreman. Roast beef and Swiss. The guard waved her through. Go ahead, Building C. She drove through the maze of shipping containers. The yard was bathed in eerie orange floodlights. She parked the van behind a stack of crates, killing the engine. We're in, she whispered into the comms earpiece. Good girl, Luca's voice came through, warm and steady in her ear. Now stay in the van. Keep the engine running. The back doors opened silently. Luca and Silas moved like shadows, slipping into the darkness towards the meeting point, a clearing between two trains where a black SUV and a limousine were parked. Maya watched through the rear-view mirror. She saw Victor Hale standing by the limo, looking nervous. A massive man in a fur-collared coat, Volkov, stepped out of the SUV. It was happening. Then her phone buzzed. Not the burner Luca gave her. Her real phone, the one she thought she had turned off. She looked at the screen. A text message. Senator Sterling. I know you're in the van, Maya. Look to your left. Maya froze. Her blood turned to ice. She slowly turned her head. Standing on top of a shipping container, 50 yards away, was a sniper. The laser sight wasn't pointed at her. It was pointed at the gap between the trains where Luca was walking. Luca! She screamed into the comms. It's a trap! Sterling sold us out. Sniper, left flank. But it was too late. A spotlight blinded them from above. Floodlights snapped on from every direction, turning the rail yard into day. Drop your weapons! A voice boomed over a loudspeaker. It wasn't the police. It was Senator Sterling, standing on a catwalk above the trains, surrounded by armed mercenaries. Luca and Silas were exposed in the open. Dozens of red laser dots danced on their chests. Victor Hale laughed, stepping back behind the protection of the Russians. Did you really think I didn't know about the van, Luca? Sterling tracks all the city cameras. We watched you steal it. Luca didn't drop his gun. He stood back to back with Silas. Maya, Luca said into the comms, his voice eerily calm. Drive. What? Drive away. Now. This ends here. I'm not leaving you, she cried, tears blurring her vision. If you stay, you die, Luca growled. Go. That is an order. Maya gripped the steering wheel. Her knuckles turned white. She shifted the van into reverse. She looked at Luca in the mirror. He was looking at the van, a silent goodbye in his eyes. She stomped on the gas. But she didn't go backward. She shifted into drive and floored it. The van squealed, tires smoking, and launched forward. Not towards the exit, towards the fuel tanker, parked next to the limousine. Maya, no, Luca shouted. She aimed the van like a missile. At the last second, she dove out of the driver's side door, tucking and rolling onto the gravel. The van smashed into the fuel tanker. The explosion was earth-shattering. A fireball erupted, consuming the limousine and knocking the mercenaries on the catwalk off their feet. The shockwave blew out the floodlights, plunging the yard back into chaos and darkness. The world didn't fade to black. It exploded into a blinding, deafening white. The impact of the van colliding with the fuel tanker sent a shock wave that rattled the teeth in Maya's skull. She had rolled out of the driver's seat a fraction of a second before impact, hitting the gravel hard. The ground tore at her skin, and the air was instantly sucked out of her lungs by the sheer force of the blast. For a moment, there was nothing but a high-pitched ringing in her ears, a sound that drowned out the roar of the fire and the screams of men. Maya lay curled behind the heavy steel wheel of a train car, her body trembling uncontrollably. The heat was intense, a physical weight pressing down on her, smelling of gasoline and burning rubber. She gasped for air, tasting ash and copper. Luca! The name cut through the disorientation like a knife. She pushed herself up, her limbs feeling heavy and foreign. The rail yard, moments ago a cold industrial maze, had been transformed into a vision of hell. The tanker was a towering inferno, casting long, dancing shadows that twisted and turned with the flames. The explosion had shattered the floodlights, leaving the yard illuminated only by the erratic, orange glow of the fire. Gunfire erupted again, but it was sporadic now, confused. The mercenaries were disoriented, their tactical advantage blown away by the shockwave. Maya peeked around the wheel of the train car. The limousine was a twisted wreck, engulfed in flames. She scanned the chaos, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She needed to find him. Movement caught her eye near the edge of the blast zone. A figure was crawling through the dust and debris. It was Victor Hale. His pristine suit was scorched, his silver hair wild and singed. He was coughing violently, dragging himself toward a fallen pistol that lay gleaming in the dirt a few feet away. He looked pathetic, a broken king in a ruined kingdom. But before his fingers could graze the weapon, a boot slammed down on his hand. Victor screamed, a raw, guttural sound of pain and terror that pierced the roar of the fire. Maya watched, breath hitched, as Luca stepped out of the smoke. He looked like a vengeful spirit rising from the underworld. His tactical shirt was torn, revealing skin smeared with soot and blood. He moved with a limp, favoring his left leg, but his gun hand was steady as rock. He stood over Victor, blocking out the light of the fire, casting a long, terrifying shadow over the man who had been his brother. "You missed," Luca said. His voice wasn't a shout. It was a low, vibrating rumble that carried terrifying clarity. Victor looked up, his face a mask of desperation. Tears streamed down his soot-stained cheeks. "Luca, please, you have to listen. It was Sterling. He forced me into a corner. The Russians. They threatened my family. They threatened everything." "I am your family," Luca roared. The composure he had maintained all night finally cracked, revealing the molten rage beneath. "I was your brother, Victor. We built this city together. And you sold me, sold us, for a seat at a table that doesn't belong to you." Victor sobbed, clutching his crushed hand to his chest as Luca stepped back. "I can fix it, Luca. We can fix it. Just let me—" "There is no fixing a broken spine," Luca said coldly. He raised his pistol, aiming directly at Victor's heart. "Goodbye, Victor." Bang! The gunshot cracked through the air. Maya flinched, closing her eyes. But when she opened them, Victor was still alive, cowering in the dirt. It was Luca who stumbled. He jerked forward, a look of profound shock crossing his face. He clutched his side, dark blood instantly welling up between his fingers. He swayed, his knees buckling, and dropped to one knee. "Luca!" Maya screamed, the sound tearing from her throat before she could stop it. She scrambled out from her cover, ignoring the heat, ignoring the danger. Behind Luca, emerging from the thick, black smoke like a nightmare, was Volkov. The massive Russian lieutenant was burned, half his face red and blistering from the heat of the explosion. His coat was gone, his shirt hanging in rags. In his hand, he held a heavy, large-caliber revolver. Smoke drifted lazily from the barrel. Volkov laughed, a wet, hacking sound. "American melodrama," he spat, blood flecking his lips. "So boring. Always talking. Never finishing." He cocked the hammer of the revolver for a second shot. Luca was struggling to lift his gun, his arm trembling, his strength failing him. He was wide open, a sitting duck. Volkov leveled the revolver at Luca's head. "Do svidania." Time seemed to slow down for Maya. She saw the glint of the fire on the barrel of Volkov's gun. She saw Luca's eyes close, accepting his fate. No, she didn't think, she didn't plan. The fear that had paralyzed her all night evaporated, replaced by a white-hot fury. She wasn't a waitress. She wasn't a victim. She was the woman who had driven a van into a fuel tanker. She scanned the ground and saw it. A jagged, twisted shard of steel debris from the exploded van. It was about a foot long, razor-sharp on one end. She grabbed it. The metal bit into her palm, but she didn't care. Maya sprinted. She ran with a speed she didn't know she possessed, closing the distance between her and the Russian. Volkov heard her scream. He turned, his eyes widening in surprise as he saw the girl in the deli apron charging him. He sneered, shifting his aim away from Luca and toward her. "Stupid girl," he fired. The bullet tore past her, grazing her upper arm. It felt like a hot branding iron being pressed against her skin, a searing line of fire. But she didn't stop. She didn't even stumble. She collided with Volkov with the force of a freight train. She was half his size, but her momentum caught him off balance. As they crashed together, she raised the jagged steel shard with both hands. With a primal scream that echoed across the burning yard, she drove the metal downward. She aimed for the gap in his heavy body armor, right beneath the armpit where the straps connected. She felt the sickening resistance of flesh, and then the give as the steel buried itself deep. Volkov gasped. The sound was wet and horrible. His eyes went wide, filled with shock and confusion. He looked at the piece of metal sticking out of him, then up at Maya's face, which was inches from his own, twisted in rage. He dropped the revolver. His hands scrabbled uselessly at the shard, his strength draining away like water from a cracked glass. He staggered back 1 step, 2 steps, and then his legs gave out. The giant collapsed backward into the dust, gargling blood, staring up at the smoke-filled sky. Maya stood over him, her chest heaving, her hands shaking so violently she had to clench them into fists. She stared at the body, unable to comprehend what she had just done. The silence of the aftermath descended, heavy and suffocating. "Maya!" The voice was weak, barely a whisper. She spun around. Luca was still on one knee, pressing his hand against his bleeding side. But he wasn't looking at Victor, who had fainted from fear, or at the dead Russian. He was looking at her. His dark eyes were wide, stripped of their usual guarded cynicism. There was no coldness there now. There was awe. Pure, unadulterated awe. "Luca!" Maya ran to him, falling to her knees in the dirt. Her hands hovered over his wound, afraid to touch him, afraid to hurt him more. "You're hit! We need a doctor! We need to go!" Luca groaned, his face pale beneath the soot. But then, incredibly, he smiled. It wasn't his usual smirk. It was soft, real. He reached up with a bloody hand and cupped her cheek, his thumb gently brushing away a smudge of ash. "I told you to drive away," he whispered, his voice raspy. "I gave you an order." Tears spilled from Maya's eyes, cutting clean tracks through the dirt on her face. She laughed, a choked, hysterical sound. "I'm terrible at taking orders, Luca. I'm a really bad waitress. I always get the orders wrong." Luca's thumb stroked her cheekbone. He pulled her forehead down to rest against his. "Then I guess," he murmured, closing his eyes, "I'll have to give you a promotion." Sirens began to wail in the distance, getting louder. But for a moment, in the center of the burning rail yard, neither of them moved. 6 months later. The onyx room had reopened, and if possible, it was even more intimidating than before. The velvet curtains were heavier, the lighting dimmer, and the air smelled of triumph and truffles. Table 4 was occupied. It was always occupied on Tuesday nights. Luca Romano sat there, looking impeccable in a tailored navy suit that cost more than most cars. He looked healthier, sharper. The only physical reminder of the night the city almost burned was a thin, jagged scar that disappeared into his hairline near his temple. He swirled a glass of sparkling water, his eyes scanning the room with the practiced ease of a king surveying his court. A waiter approached the table. He was new, young, nervous, clutching a wine list like a shield. His hands trembled slightly as he set down the water. Would you like to see the wine list, sir?" the waiter stammered. "No need," a woman's voice said from behind him. The waiter jumped, stepping back as Maya slid into the booth across from Luca. She wasn't wearing an apron. She wasn't fading into the background. She was wearing a structured white blazer that looked like armor made of silk, and diamonds glittered at her throat and ears. Her hair was loose, cascading over her shoulders. She didn't look invisible anymore. She looked like the woman who owned the building, because technically her name was on the deed. "The 2018 Barolo," Maya told the waiter, her voice cool and commanding. "And bring 2 glasses. I'm celebrating." The waiter nodded furiously and scrambled away. Luca watched her, amusement dancing in his dark eyes. "What are we celebrating, Tesoro?" He reached across the table, taking her hand. His thumb brushed over the platinum band on her finger. Not an engagement ring, but something heavier. A symbol of partnership. Maya smiled. It wasn't the polite, customer service smile she had worn for years. It was a dangerous, knowing smile. The smile of the Queen of Chicago. "I just got a secured message from Silas," she said softly, leaning in. "They found Senator Sterling in Mexico. The accounts have been settled, permanently." Luca raised an eyebrow, genuinely impressed. "You authorized a cleanup order on a senator? Without consulting me?" "I learned from the best," Maya said, leaning back as the waiter returned with the wine. She watched the crimson liquid pour into the glasses. "Besides, I didn't want you to worry. You have a date tonight." Luca laughed, a rich, genuine sound that made heads turn throughout the restaurant. People whispered, "That's him, that's her, the couple who burned down the rail yards." He picked up his glass, raising it to her. "To the waitress," he murmured, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that still made her breath hitch. Maya clinked her glass against his. "To the boss," she corrected. They drank, the rich wine tasting of victory. Outside, the Chicago wind howled, cold and unforgiving. But inside, at table 4, they were untouchable. And that is the story of how a single note on a napkin toppled an empire. It shows that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one with the gun. It's the one you never noticed watching you. If you enjoyed this twisty Mafia romance, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. What would you have done if you were Maya? Run away or fight? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next part of our storytelling saga. Thanks for watching.